We are very disappointed with the fact that a powerful politician would still oppress women and sexually harass them using his power. So we are very concerned and feel the need to change the mindset of South Korean society as quickly as possible.
Sexual harassment has long been a taboo subject in South Korea, but the MeToo movement may be changing that. A South Korean governor resigned after his secretary accused him of raping her. The government closed Nobel Prize-winning poet Ko-eun's exhibition after he was accused of sexual harassment, and the actor Jo Min-ki killed himself after allegations went public that he sexually assaulted at least 8 women. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Nancy Snow, a professor of public diplomacy at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies. And also joining us is the feminist writer who goes by the name Emily Singh. She runs the blog Real Koreans. I thank you both for joining us. Emily, let me begin with you. Has that resignation of the politician in South Korea opened things up in the country when it comes to sexual harassment and sexual assault?
Definitely. I think it is a good step towards making the right changes we need in Korean society, in politics, but also in wider society.
Mm-hmm. And tell me why it's been so much of a taboo subject up until now.
Well, I think there are several reasons. First of all, South Korea is a very hierarchical, very patriarchal society. So discussing issues such as sexual harassment were taboo in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Nancy, do you see similarities with Japan?
Oh, absolutely. What she just said there about certain taboo subjects, we also in Japan, it's a very hierarchical, and it is still quite a masculine society.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Japan and the worldwide gender equality index is much lower than it should be. But I think there are some differences here as well, which have to do with South Korea really being a little bit more progressive in this arena. And it could have something to do with more of a sense of right and wrong that's a result of some of the Christianity that has a greater influence to play in South Korean society than it does in Japan.
Yeah, Emily, how would you compare what has emerged and unfolded now in South Korea versus what emerged and unfolded in the US with the MeToo movement there?
I think in some contexts it is very similar. It is a mass movement of women coming forward with their experiences and fighting for social justice. But the social context of what's happening in Korea is a little bit different because it seems to be more of a demand for anonymity. That's why, for example, I'm anonymous myself, and I don't really plan on releasing my real name, for example. Yeah, there is more of a need for security for the women who come forward in the MeToo movement in South Korea.
Yeah, and naturally, every time there's a movement, there's some pushback. Emily, so after Jo Min-ki hanged himself, we found another actor post something, I think his name was You Are In, showing images of people being burnt at the stake, and other people sort of bought into this meme that there's a witch hunt taking place against men. Do they have any credibility? Do they at least have some truth to what they're saying?
There is some validity in what they are feeling in as their individual persons, and they see those feminist movements as personal attacks on themselves. However, they need to realize that this is a systematic problem, that it's an institutional problem against women.
Yeah, and Emily, when Seoul closed an exhibition by the 84-year-old poet Ko-eun, was that the right thing to do? Saying, okay, there's allegations of harassment, we're not going to give you any publicity, any attention, we're not going to treat you as normal until we sort this out.
I think it's a very clear message that things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and Nancy, talking about moving in the right direction, do you see what's happening in South Korea affecting what's happening in Japan? Because as you mentioned earlier, you feel that Japan is not quite there yet.
It isn't quite there yet. There has been some discussion about why the #MeToo movement hasn't really taken flight here. There have been some isolated cases, but it's still very difficult for women to come forward. We had International Women's Day recently, and there were some protesters out or people with placards, and they were using some humorous signs to bring attention to the ongoing problem here in Japan between men and women and the lack of equality. But I think that in Japan, that Me Too is viewed as too much of an import from the United States. And I believe that if there is going to be something happening here, it will be slower moving than what is happening in South Korea. And it will have to come from within Japanese society, and maybe from the grassroots, and then putting pressure on the government. I don't see it as going from the government down to the grassroots. So far, it's the talk in the Abe administration has been about womenomics, and a lot of that has had to do with productivity. Emily makes a great point, though, that this is a systemic problem. And if there were a way to frame this as being good for everyone, this awakening, that it would help economic productivity, that would make people feel less like they're being targeted or that it's some type of man-hating mechanism.
Yeah. Emily, it's fascinating because Ms. Kim Ji-eun said that she got the courage to come forward after what happened in the US mainly. And what we're hearing from Nancy is that that's less likely to happen in a place like Japan because it's seen as an import. It's seen as somebody else's battle in another country. Is that the key difference between the two countries, maybe?
I think there is that difference in perception. It is true that the Me Too movement, as we see it in the press right now, is something that started in the US. However, there is a build-up to this movement that's happening in Korea that already began in 2015 with feminist websites becoming very popular, and in 2016 with the Gangnam murder case. So that's a continuation in the Korean context.
Nancy, for those who say, where are the laws on the books that are actually advocating for sexual harassment or sexual assault? There aren't any laws on the books that are discriminating against women. When you say culture or you say patriarchy, it's very nebulous and it's very subjective. Do they have a point?
Right. It is somewhat subjective, but I think here in Japan, people have to really believe that stepping forward is not going to come at such a great personal cost. Also, you don't have people working through the legal system so much. Everything here is about culture and about the seasons, and things take time, and you don't want to upset the natural flow and the social harmony of society. Somebody sticking out too much and seen as quote unquote complaining, that's an outlier, and that person is not often appreciated. It would take a number of people collectively, men and women here in Japan, who are inspired by what's happening increasingly globally and who feel like they want to be part of this global community to make a change. With the approaching Tokyo 2020 Olympics and with the eyes of the world more on Japan, there are many more foreign tourists here than ever. There will be a sense of pressure, outside pressure, and that might change things and speed things up here.
Yeah, some intriguing insights and analysis as to how Me Too affects the context in East Asia. It's been fascinating learning about it from both of you, Nancy and Emily. I've got to move on, but I thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.